Information regarding your parts inventory is maintained in the Item Master Table, which you can access from the Utility tab, Master Tables, then Item. Now, as in most of TMS, this is built into sections. So for each item, you have your details section, which tells you your part number, various information, which we'll cover. You have your second section, which is your item status, and that is specific to warehouse. So if you'd like to check the status of this item in the Jersey warehouse, you simply change warehouses and you see that item is not stocked there. And in the third section are vendors for that item, with a check for who is your primary vendor. So let's look at the information in the item table. For every item, you have 3 identifying part numbers. The item number, which is how you stock it in your system. The user part number, which is just a second identifying part number. Case would be a bearing. There's many multiple numbers for bearings. Then an OEM number. If you're using your own numbering system, you might want to reference the OEM part number. A unit of measure, description, an alternate description, the general ledger account that came from the master table, general ledger account table that we've covered earlier. Any comments about the part, whether the item is taxable or not, and, if you so choose, an item image. In the status section, and this is specific to warehouse, you'll have a bin location, a quantity on hand, which, as we see in this, will go negative. This is a maintenance management system as opposed to a pure accounting system. And we know many times in the maintenance department, some things get out of whack as far as when things are received and charged out. So we are on the side of making sure the cost gets associated with the asset. We have a date last used, a last receipt date. The date last used is updated from the work order process. The last receipt date is updated from either the purchase order receiving process or the inventory transaction process. There's a consignment flag, yes or no. The maintenance shop handles consignments. So if this is a consignment item from one of your vendors, select yes. If it's your own inventory, select no. Minimum on hand and a maximum on hand. The system automatically keeps track of the quantity that you used, and this can be reset. We've covered that in another section called the inventory reset function. Quantity discount, that's simply if you get a discount after a certain number of items, and that's used in the purchase order calculation. The last cost, that's updated by receivings, either via purchase order or inventory transaction. And the average cost, and the system calculates that based on how your items come in and out of stock. And then the item vendors allows you to specify who your vendors for that item are. So let's set up a new asset, a new item. Click the new button and enter a part number. If you have a user part number, enter one. Unit of measure. In this case, we'll assume we don't have another number for that. Description. Alternate description. And select a general ledger account. Whether the item is taxable or not. If you have an item image, you can specify it at that point. In this case, we're going to assume that we just don't. That's not required. Now for the item status. Now remember, this is specific to this warehouse. We'll give it a bin location. and a minimum, maximum. Notice how I can't change the quantity on hand, nor the quantity used. They're updated automatically via processing. And notice I can't update the date last used, the last cost, or the average cost, or the last receipt date. These fields are all updated via other processes and cannot be manually entered. If it's a consignment item, click yes. In this case, we'll say no. And then we can select a vendor for the part. And when we're done, click Save. Now, we have this item in this warehouse. If we want to set up this status in your other warehouses, simply go up to the warehouse, choice, and pick the other warehouse. And go in here, click Edit, and update the information for this warehouse. And again, we can't update these fields. They're updated by processing. And notice that since we're in a different warehouse, we can have a different vendor. And it can be a different primary vendor, but in this case, we'll use the same vendor. And click Save. And that's all it takes to set up an item. Now this is ready for you to charge out, receive in, and use in your operations. And that covers the item master table in the maintenance shop.